Hello, this is Dustin Martinez, and we're going to go over something that's kind of been developed, a group of officers, and we've implemented at the AOIC and the Fire Officer One program. And it's kind of just a compilation of some decision-making stuff that can help us. We kind of took the Nozzle Forward philosophy of the rule of threes and how easy that is to remember. We applied it to here, and we kind of used like the John Norman concepts of, three main priorities as kind of how we're going to attack it. So the whole point of this is for seat riders pulling up to a structure fire, and it kind of helps the decision-making process for them. No one typically comes up to a house fire and says, hey, if I had a fan, we would really get this thing under check as a first due seat rider. It's really like one of our main decisions we're going to make as that first in officer. How this works is the first due, second due, third due really only have three choices that they have to remember. And it really helps, not only other officers to kind of project what's going to happen and anticipate their assignment, but they can also see if there's a deviation, what still needs to happen. And, the overall goal is in the first two assignments to get a search and attack and a water supply established. And if we can't do that, at least in the first three assignments, so we can get those major tasks accomplished. And for those battalion chiefs that are arriving, if they hear in your first two or three units, you have a line stretch, a search started, a water supply established, and even a second line bent or support work done, the incident's probably going to go pretty smoothly, and it really helps everybody with that decision making. So as a first due officer, in order of time diminishing requirements, these are really all the decisions we have to make. Do we have a rescue? Do we have an immediate known location of a victim that we need to get them out? Or do we have just one small searchable space that if we don't take that initiative right now, we're going to lose it and there's no chance of savable life? Do we have, even with reports of victims, an unknown location? Do we have a fire that's unchecked? Or do we need to stretch a line to make everything better? That'll be our second decision of an attack. And this is typically, 99% of the fires we encounter is first in officers identifying the location of that stretch and what line needs to be pulled. Third decision would be, hey, do we have no life safety of that house, everything gone, no searchable space, no ability to save anything. And at this point, we're in exposure control. And that's really that third decision. Hey, we're defensive, we're exposure control, we're not going to make an impact here. So this first example, this one's a pretty clear cut and dry. Like first an officer pulls up to these victims on the balcony. We know we're going rescue mode. We're going to let all of the units know, hey, we're going for a rescue. And this way, the second due officer has an idea of what they're going to do and how everybody's going to accomplish it. So you pull up to this, pretty obvious. Hey, first engine in, we have victims on a balcony. We'll be going to rescue. Whether they say it or not, that second due officer kind of implies that their task will be stretching the line. Someone still has to put that fire out and keep it in check to buy us more time, as well as if there's any other victims in a multi-family dwelling like this. So here we can see that. First one in, they chose rescue mode, attack and exposure off the table, and we'll have that picked up later by a second due apparatus. We pull up something like this. Even though we know that, hey, there's a car in the front, right at the front door, wide open door. We don't know the victim's location. We don't want to send a crew just start searching the entire house, where we could put a line and knock this out. Whether that first crew knocks it out and goes and searches, or that second due does, we're going to stretch a line on this, put that fire out. So coming in as that first due officer, seeing this, pretty simple. We're going to attack. We're stretching the line here. First due officer comes up. We encounter something like this. This is, pretty obvious that this is a fully involved structure. We'll get a 360 to confirm this. Our on scene might be, hey, heavy fire showing. 360, hey, fully involved defensive operations. We know that we're going to basically be defensive and exposure control as that first due officer. Now, second due comes in, and this is where the decisions of that first due will guide us towards our decisions as that second due. Our goal is to supplement whatever assignment it is with the opposite, whether it's attack or search, and then also try and get a water supply. We know the water supply is a one-man operation between the driver of the first due and the driver of the second due. So we know that we still have two people at minimum, maybe three, to handle an assignment. So something like this, where, hey, they have a confirmed victim location, they can hear the victim inside, She's at that window. PD's inside, or PD's there already advising it. They hear her talk. Second dude starts stretching the line. Even with this vent point ignition that we see, because that second dude officer is stretching the line, having his crew do it. Now we have a search ready to enter the window, a line flowing, so we can get in that window, and they buy and hold searchable real estate for us as that first due in the rescue operation. Here we can see that first due went rescue, knowing that that's already been accomplished as that second due officer. That red tells me we could take that off the table. My goal then is to get an attack line in place and a water supply established. Obviously, if the first due caught their own water supply, that wouldn't even be an issue for us either. We'd be stretching the line. We see something like this. Once again, this fire has reports of victims behind that closed door. We know that we're going to have to get a knockdown to access it, as well as to buy time for the rescuers and the victim. So the first due goes and stretches the line. Second due coming in hearing that, we know we can anticipate our firefighter and officer is going to be in the search mindset, and we can understand that our driver's main goal is going to be a water supply on this. Here we see that. First goes attack. Second due goes for a rescue and a water supply if possible. Once again, if that first due catches a water supply for us, then we don't have to worry about it. Here we see another obvious defensive / exposure control operation. We're probably going to get multiple water supplies on this, multiple aerials going. These are all things that we're going to have to think about. However, that first due is basically setting up for defensive operation, wanting to coordinate where ladder trucks will go, starting a deck gun or a ram, depending on what they consider. Second dudes want to really start ensuring they get a good water supply, even scouting for secondary water supply locations. And they'll probably be stretching a second line, maybe another ram, a 2.5, whatever, large line to address this large bulk of fire. Third due is really probably the most complex of all of it, where they're going to have to kind of hear what's going on and fill the needs of the rest of that fire ground. But still, we're really dialed down to 3 different choices. And that's the beauty of this, is it makes every officer's choice in those first 3 units one of 3. And so we really only have 9 possible scenarios we have to prepare for, and that helps us streamline it. So that first unit goes rescue mode. That second unit's able to get attack in their water supply. That third due is going to be ventilation, support work, a second line, whatever is needed to address that incident. But we have an idea. Typically, once again, we're not going to see, start a fan as that third due apparatus if we have significant fire, or if they're in on a rescue mode. We're not going to see some of the more small supportive tasks being handled by that third due apparatus. Here, that unit goes into attack mode after the first due officer. Second due, once again, wants to secure that rescue, getting the search going and trying to get that water supply established. Knowing that as a third due, that you hear water supplies being handled, you'll go again with that second line or the vent or support work. If you are third due and you are not hearing water supply, maybe that first due went rescue mode, second due is trying to stretch the line, still no water supply, nobody's called out hydrants, nobody starts to lay lines for a hydrant. It's pretty clear, cut and dry. You are water supply. So here we see that, right? Rescue and attack is handled by first due, second due. Third due needs to get that water supply, and knowing we still have 2, maybe 3 personnel to work, we'll still handle that second line or vent work and support work, and that's flipped around even if that first due company goes attack. If we have a long setback and water supply still for some reason hasn't been established, or even we have a extremely long water supply, that third due needs to fill the void and make sure it's accomplished. There are outliers that we would have to be prepared for. We have to know that these possibilities exist and have a plan. One of those would be something like this, where you're so victim saturated, multiple victims in a multifamily dwelling that require lots of hands. This is just going to have to be an audible that we'll have to be prepared for, but you can see how this can exhaust resources pretty quickly. Something like this, maybe the first and second due apparatus are all in on this rescue operation to get some ladders and start getting people, and then that third due stretching a line. Here, most likely, we're going to be very tied up with victims, especially once we get them out, starting some triage and EMS. But those officers coming in, hearing all this, you can anticipate you'll have one of those 3 assignments. And sometimes we have to support both attack and search as that first two apparatus. In the 4-man world, this is a little bit easier. In the 3-person apparatus, we have to get creative, but we can see we also at times need to address fire and victims, and some incidents have such a small time window that we have to do both at the same time. So here, whether it's a firefighter or driver stretching the line, an officer starting up the ladder, or the driver handling the nozzle and the officer and firefighter getting up the ladder, water has to be applied, and we have to address the victims on that top. So 2 key priorities have to happen here. It's not complex. This isn't anything new. This is just a way that we kind of created to help us identify what should be happening on the fire ground and what we project to happen on the fire ground. And as a seat rider, we're able to talk to our crews coming in to get them in the right mindset. And then we can kind of predict and remember what needs to happen. Once again, this is not something we created. This is years of mentors contributing little by little and compiling it up, adapting from the Nozzle Forward philosophy of the rule of 3's, and really hammering home John Norman's principles of, if you can perform attack, search, and ventilation at the same time, do so. If not, perform attack and search. And if you can't, choose a decision that's going to make the greatest impact on that fire ground. Thank you for your time.